Hi, everybody. For those that know me, I'm Jeff Peress, and I'm running for U.S. Senate. I'm challenging Chuck Schumer. Everything you heard about the state level goes hand in hand with the federal level. Why is it that the states are suffering? I'm from Long Island. Why is it that we're laying off 15 teachers, school teachers, in my school district and the neighboring school districts? Why is it that the MTA is cutting back on the train service and the everything else? Why is it that people are in furthermore debt than ever? It trickles down from the federal government. We're wasting money right now. I think we paid, like in Nassau County last year, we paid $8.5 billion in our federal taxes just to fund the war in Iraq. That's not including Afghanistan. I, as a U.S. Senator, want to end this endless war and pull out. No timetables, immediate pullout. It's an unjust war for the pipelines. All that money would go back toward our communities, toward our jobs, everything else. I would like to dedicate a part of my my campaign, to my father also, the late David Y. Peress. My father came to this country from Israel in 1962 on a visitor's visa to visit his brothers. He ended up remaining here. I am of Iraqi Jewish descent. He came to this country and he ended up overstaying his visa. I understand the immigration laws, how unjust they are, how people are getting deported every day because they overstayed their visa or they weren't here legally. Despite the fact that they got married to an American or they had children in this country, they're being separated from their families. This has got to stop. I support a full amnesty program for that. On the gas drilling, hey, let's look at everything. What about we could create jobs easily in New York State. Of course, as a U.S. Senator, I have to look out for New York State, but the whole country as a whole. In New York State, we could create jobs easily. Look at the Niagara region. You could create a hydro plant that would employ hundreds of people. On Long Island, you could create plants like in Glen Cove and Brentwood, where solar production products, and it make it cheaper and easier. This is where our jobs are. This is how we can create jobs right here. Another thing, I would also like to dedicate this to Paul Gilman, who is doing federal time for distributing medical marijuana. 5 years in the minimum federal security state. 5 years. You legalize marijuana. In New York State, the farmers, the upstate farmers, you create jobs there. The small farmers, they grow it, they produce hemp, and you can produce oils, everything else out of it, and energy, clean energy out of that. That's jobs for New York State. That's the hundreds and thousands of jobs for New York State. As for the BP Amoco, where are the environmental organizations? Where is the Sierra Club? Where are all the Democrats over there? They're silent because they have a Democratic administration that's doing nothing about it. What the government needs to do is take over BP Amoco's assets, seize all their assets, take it over, and make them clean up for their spills. I only got a few minutes left, but I am proud to tell you, I'm a lifelong resident of Glen Cove, Long Island. I'm a volunteer firefighter. I have an office right now in Glen Cove for my campaign, and I have a community that's willing to help me out. Hundreds of volunteers, especially in the projects. I've ran for offices several times, and everybody's asked me, when are you going to run for office again? I want you to run for office because I don't normally vote. But when you run for office, you're in there. This is what you need to get. Disenfranchised voters. You run for office, you get the disenfranchised voters, you're not practicing to the choir, preaching to the choir. Anyway, I hope I can count on your support for U.S. Senate. Onward.
What will you do to pressure the president to appoint genuine liberal judges and justices in the tradition of William Brennan and Thurgood Marshall?
I think it's going to be very difficult to pressure this president, given that he really has a serious backing from our communities of color, from young students. It was an hour when we were all faced with an upsurge sponsored by corporate America, trickery for the young and trickery for people of color and the immigrant communities, and also for large numbers of women and others. So what I think we have to do is we have to decide who we want for judge. And that we have to say that, Obama, you cannot pass over a black woman who is far more qualified than the sister that you have pushed forward, who has no jurist background at all, a political appointment. That was a black sister standing, and he could appoint a black sister. We need to ask why not. But I think that has to be a movement, and that's the kind of groundswell that we have to build in this country to deal with Obama. That's the only way we'll deal with him.
My answer, accountability. You have to have your elected officials accountable, whether they are in two major political parties. There's no such thing as a lesser of two evil. If they're a lesser of two evil, you still have to hold them accountable and say, we want this individual as a Supreme Court justice. I would like to see someone like Thurgood Marshall.
Well, there's a sister in line who was like Thurgood Marshall.
One of the reasons that Cynthia McKinney was lost her seat in Congress when her own party got together with the Republicans to get her out was her stand on this, on the Israeli government and Israel, the Israeli oppression of the Palestinians. Now, that's a really touchy subject. Would either one of you be willing to address that to the public?
You know, I think that we really do need to go back and look at 48 forward. Go back and look at the black brother who got a Nobel Peace Prize for helping to push forward what we know now as the Israeli state. And I think that going back, we also need to take our parties back. And we need to work from that point in terms of talking about how do we get justice for Palestine, while at the same time recognizing the eternal, it seems eternal, pressures placed upon a group of people called Jews. I don't think we can overlook that. But we cannot, on the other hand, allow our government to spend billions of dollars annually to train military forces, to work with others in the world to allow the misplaced members of that community of Israel to destroy the men, women, and especially the children of what we know today as Palestine. They have a right to a tree of life. The way in which the land was divided up was not in their best interest, and it was their land at that time. But we have to work on getting it resolved.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm Jewish, and I lived in Israel for quite a while. Schumer has no interest toward peace over there. He's a hawk. He's like everyone else. I, as a Jew, will challenge him. He is not in the best interest to American Jewry or the Israelis. He does not support a peace plan. I support a peace plan. I will personally go over there and negotiate. I have family over there. They have a different perspective than American Jewry. Here, they're hawks here. We're hawks over here. But there's a different perspective over there. And they're a little more open-minded. So I want to negotiate. I have a cousin who used to be the prime minister's first-hand person. He was the comptroller of the state of Israel. Maybe I can ask him, if I go there, to let me speak with some of the government officials. And on the side of in Gaza, only if they invite me, if the officials over there invite me as their guest, I'll go over there too and speak and work for a true peace solution. We know what's got to get done. We have to, and I personally think I could live this. $2.9 billion, hey, in military aid, we could use that $2.9 billion here in New York for health care and education. For God's sakes, we're Americans first. Who are we loyal to, here or over there?